Welcome to Delingpole, a Breitbart.com podcast. Here is the podcast host, James Delingpole.
Hello and welcome to the Delingpole podcast with me, James Delingpole, brought to you by Breitbart. Now, this week's guest is almost certainly my most controversial one yet. He's been described as the most hated man in Britain. His name is Tommy Robinson. Tommy, welcome to the show. Tell me, first of all, why it is you're so hated.
It's a bit of a facade that I am hated, but I'm not the most hated man in Britain. Right. I'm hated by a liberal elite. I'm hated by, and to be honest, sometimes I pick certain people. Obviously, I'm not allowed to criticise Islam that's how members of the Islamic community feel. So they hate me for criticising Islam. But then there's people as well who dislike me because they've been lied to. I have so many people who say, I hated you. I thought you was a radical extremist. And I'm gutted. I've been lied to for years. I have so many people currently contacting me who are going back over my speeches throughout the years, who are now actually saying, rather than listening to the headline, I'm listening to what you say. And since my Oxford speech, I showed a lot of this in my Oxford Union talk, where I showed them a scenario of what the media showed them and the headline that the media showed them. And then I showed, here's the video of what actually happened. So you've all judged me. And I don't blame a lot of you are sitting in this room. You dislike. When I walked into Oxford Union, no one would talk to me. Okay? Beforehand, you're meant to meet all the students. I mean, I got the cold shoulder completely, yeah? By the end of it, everyone's taking selfies with me. Yeah,
really.
And by the end of it, I got a round of applause. It was such a great feeling because Oxford Union was my first opportunity. You have to understand that when I was leading the English Defence League, any opportunity like now, sitting with yourself, any journalist I met, they weren't there to listen. They were there to demonise and silence and stereotype and slander and criticise and throw everything they can at me. Usually wasn't anything to do with what I'm saying. It's to do with my background or my past or my life. Mistakes I've made, genuine mistakes. So, which are nothing to do with my political belief or what I'm saying. It's nothing to do with racism or extremism. It's just in a way of putting me in a box. You're in a box as we want to put you in this box and we're going to make you fit in it. So that's what I faced for years. And now Oxford Union, this was the first opportunity where I had an hour and 20 minutes unchallenged to tell people, listen to my side of the story here. Let me talk you through my life. And then I want you to question each time, what would you have done if this happened in your town, where you live, the town you love, the people you love, if you've seen and witnessed what I've witnessed? And I kept bringing it back to what would you have done, what would you have done? And by the end of it, I just had all of them say, I've never knew this. And I said, no, because you've been lied to. And there's been a campaign against us.
So you were an ordinary working class boy in Luton, which I think we were talking about it earlier. It's a bit of a shithole, isn't it? Tell us about Luton first of all.
I always say Luton's a shithole, but it's our shithole. It's our shithole and we love it. So I was born in Luton in 1982. Luton, you have to realise that Luton has a lot of problems, not just Islamic problems. Luton was voted the roughest town in Britain. Okay, it's got a crime rate that compares to London, for a small area like Luton. We've had, I think we had 30 shootings in 6 months. It's got a lot of problems, yeah. And then adding to that, so when I was born in 1982, we had one mosque. There's currently over 30. We've been the launch pad for the 7/7 bomb plot, the fertiliser bomb plot, the Stockholm bomber. Just in the last 12 months, we've had Muslims sentenced to prison for joining ISIS, for recruiting for ISIS, for another 5 who were sentenced for planning to blow up the territorial army in the town. They're all grew up, like when I go through this, Stockholm bomber lived 3 doors up from my auntie. The one who planned to blow up the territorial army lived next door to my best friend. We had another one who's sentenced for planning to behead an American soldier over in Norfolk. So when I talk about these things, Roger Ibrahim Anderson, who's one of a radical convert who's in jail for ISIS as well. I was friends with him. As a kid, as a kid. I was friends with him.
What was he like as a kid?
We knocked about together. So he went off the rails. He ended up in prison for car theft and criminality. I think armed robbery was what the charge when he converted. As a kid, he was, like most kids, he was in a rough estate, growing up in a rough estate. He was all right. I knew him, his sister, I knew his mum. Yeah.
So it could have been you. It could have been you in prison now for.
Yeah, you have to. It could have been. Yeah, easily. Yeah. So a lot of when I talk, like a lot of my friends have been to jail and are in jail.
Yeah.
But that doesn't change. So when you talk, like I said, when people say this, they're still your friends. I went to school with these kids. I've grown up with them. They're like so. It's like you don't change your friends because of you have different views or opinions. I avoided all of that. I avoided all that in my upbringing. So I steered clear of all crime as a kid. When mainly due to the influence of my mum. My mum was strict. strict.
Sort of clip you around the ear,
the
old-fashioned way.
Yeah, and I didn't want to be involved in those things anyway. So I didn't. But at the same time, I can see why people have been involved and do get involved, and sometimes a lot of it's just wrong place, wrong time, wrong friends.
Yeah. So why do you think it is that Luton, of all places, has got such a high concentration of Islamists?
That's organised, orchestrated and been controlled and intentionally done. So Luton was... You have to understand that Luton's Pakistani community come from Kashmir. Kashmir is one of the most uneducated and backward areas of Pakistan. So we have a very uneducated group of Pakistanis coming to our country, where back home in their country there is extremism untold. Loads. Extremism and radicalisation and terrorism. Yeah. So we then have them in our country. We then have Omar Bakri Abu Hamza set up their base in Luton, which was... I can't pronounce it right. I always get mocked for it. Al Mujahideen. Their base was on Biscuit Mill, right? So Biscuit Mill is just in the town centre. This was their head office. So for 20 years, and this was first brought to my attention when I first started doing something about this in 2004. When I first realised who these people were, when I started looking into who these people were. This was after the Beslem School Massacre. I saw after the Beslem School Massacre, which was children being murdered in front of their parents outside the school, screaming, crying. It was horrific. I then saw Luton Muslims sitting in chicken shop on camera saying it would be justified happening in a British school. It was that point that I sat and thought, who are these?
So you're not very old now. How old are you now?
No, I'm 34.
Okay, so you what, mid
I was 21.
21, okay.
21, and you have to understand that. So when I was younger, when I left school, I done everything right. Yeah? My grades, I got 11 GCSEs, I got an A in maths, I got 5 Bs, 5 Cs, and then I done an apprenticeship in aircraft engineering with Britannia Airways. So I done a 4-year apprenticeship to qualify. Which kept me out of any trouble as well at the same time. So I knew I had a career ahead of me. I don't think I was suited to that job or that industry. And I'll tell you why I felt out of place as well. Everyone I'd speak to who worked there, I'd ask where they're from. Some of them were from here, where we are now, a beautiful little place. None of them were from Luton, okay? They're all from villages. They were different to me, okay? What I saw as normal, they didn't. And that's just because of where I'm from. That's because of the upbringing I've had. Yeah. So it's like, I didn't feel, I felt like I should have been on a building site, and I should have been laying bricks, and I should have been where my friends were. That's where my friends were. They were all in the building trade, but I was in what would be seen as a better career and a better job. But I didn't feel it, and I stuck at it. After 2 years, I felt I didn't want to be doing it, but I stuck at it. I qualified. I then had a fight with an off-duty police officer, which I was convicted of. That was my first ever offence, first ever arrest. And I was sentenced to 12 months in prison.
And
that changed my life.
What's it like in prison?
So back then, it wasn't like it was now. I've seen the complete difference in time. So back then, the religion aspect of it wasn't... Pakistani gangs are always stuck together. They're always hardcore. That was still happening then in prison. The religious aspect, the Islamic influence, wasn't there in 2000. I didn't really... I was only in Bedford prison at that time. I spent 4 months there. Didn't see the religious aspect to it in 2004. Compare that to now, that's all it is. And then so I think I come out of prison, and then I'd lost my career. At that point, I was a young angry man. Yeah, I was a young angry man with no career, no prospect. It's at that time that I got involved in football hooliganism. And I did that in the sense that my family, you have to understand, as I was brought up, my uncles, my cousins were all leading members of Luton's football hooligan scene. Right. So my whole life I've been spoken to about it and looked up to it and heard about it. And this is and Luton's football hooligan scene was a multicultural scene, because there's so many blacks in Luton. Right. So it was never about race. It was just and it was something that, so I've come out of prison and I still say I found my identity in that scene. It gave me, as a white minority of English people in the town, there's nothing that celebrated being English. bearing in mind my mum's Irish, but I didn't feel Irish. I don't feel Irish. So my mum's Irish. I watch all the other cultures in town and people celebrate their identity. St Lucian Day, which is great, yeah. St Lucian Day, we have a festival and a fair every year in the town. St Patrick's Day, we have a free day festival. Eid, we have fairgrounds, everything, yeah. Comes to St George's Day, nothing.
No.
Actually, not just nothing, but banned. Actually, not just nothing. The letters sent to the schools saying that you cannot bring in the emblem of St George or you'll be sent home. This was Icknield School. Now you compare that with when Pakistan won the cricket and the whole school was supposed to celebrate Pakistan and with flags. So it's sort of like this sort of like down feeling of who you are and identity, and you're searching for that. Everyone's searching for a belonging, yeah, and that's why so many people are converting to Islam in communities like ours, because you're searching for something that you belong to. And I found that in the football culture. It's a culture, the football casual culture. I found that. That's it. This is who I am. That's what I found. This is who I am. This is where I belong. And that's a good thing or a bad thing. But at that time when I saw this group, that's at the time that I thought, no, they're not doing that in our town.
Yeah. Well, I suppose you're a young man. You've got loads of testosterone.
Yeah.
And had it been World War I or World War II, you'd have joined a PALS battalion. You'd gone off to war, probably got killed in the trenches. World War II, you'd have gone off to fight, and you'd have worked out that kind of masculine stuff. But I suppose football hooliganism for a lot of working class men is where it's at, isn't it?
It's where it's at, and then it wasn't just so the football scene. It's like it's not. Yeah, it's not. I still don't see if it's not. It's not how it's portrayed. That's what I'd say. I'm not going to defend mindless violence, but it's not mindless violence against people who didn't want to fight you.
Yeah, no, it's
organised.
Both
it's
sides are
respectful.
up for it, aren't
People
they?
aren't kicking people on the floor. They're not hurting people. It's yeah. So so I'm in that scene. I'm involved in that scene. We're a growing scene in the town, making a reputation in the town. And then I come across a group of radical Muslim jihadists who are sending people to fight for the Taliban. And that was my first awareness of this situation. And as a young man, I just looked and said, well, they're not doing that in our town. This is not happening in our town. So I organised my first demonstration against them. I called it Ban the Luton Taliban. I was pretty naive as to what I was up against, because I just thought we're football hooligans and we're up for a fight, and these lot think they're fighting our country and we're not going to have it. Yeah. So I organised a rally. I stood in the town centre. I read an article. I read a leaflet that I made. Thankfully, the leaflet got printed on the front page of my local newspaper. And you should dig this leaflet out, because I did it for my Oxford talk. And in this leaflet, I made it clear. My rhetoric hasn't changed. I made it clear that I don't want Muslims to feel we're targeting all of you with this, because you have to understand as well that in the background I've got Muslim mates. Yeah. I've got Muslim friends still now. Yeah.
Have those mates stayed unradicalised, or have they all gone the way?
No, stayed unradicalised.
Right.
No, the actual ones that were born Muslim, that were born as Pakistani, they've stayed unradicalised. I've got the only people who have radicalised are friends that have converted. So one of my other best friends, one of my best friends, Barrington, his name was. He's now called Imran. Mixed race lad. One of the toughest kids from our state. He converted in prison. He got 4.5 years in prison for a gang fight against Pakistani Muslims. He come out a Muslim radical.
Right. Well, I wanted to ask you about that, because I'm interested. Do you think that part of the appeal of radical Islam to young men is it's like joining the hardest gang? I mean,
no, it is.
Like being a member of the real firm, the one that just...
That's what it is. That's exactly what it is. When you're in prison, it's like there's all the converts in there. They haven't converted because they believe Muhammad flew up to heaven on a winged horse. Yeah? They don't believe that. They've simply, at that time, they don't. When they have joined a gang that gives them power, control, and status. And that's what it's used as. So really, in a way, I explained that Islam is being used in the prison system as a control mechanism for gangs. It's the biggest gang. Once you join that gang, no one will mess with you. And I mean no one.
Yes. You
can go from one prison to another prison. It does usually, say like as a non-Muslim, I'll get settled in a prison. You'll then get moved to another prison, and you're on your own again. Yeah, when you land there. Not if you're a Muslim, you're not. You're straight in the brotherhood. You're straight welcomed in. And then the Muslims target everything against non-Muslims. So if a non-Muslim if a non-Muslim has a fight with a Muslim in jail, every Muslim will hurt them. You can't fight. You can't mess around with Muslims in prison because of the brotherhood status and the control that it has. They will all defend them. Even paedophiles. So paedophiles who would usually get beaten up and attacked, just convert to Islam. Convert to Islam, then they're protected. That's why Levi, the killer of some young girls, Levi Bellenfield, is it?
Yes.
Yeah, you see all these people
Has
convert.
Levi Belfield converted?
Yeah, he's an Islamic. He's Muslim now.
Because otherwise he would be
He'd be,
dead meat.
he'd be in for a
Because
time element.
He's very hated.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
I was once by accident on holiday during the LA riots, so I got to know a bit about the kind of the sort of the gang scenes there. And what somebody explained to me was that the gang that wins is whichever gang is prepared to go in harder than anybody else. If there's a gang that uses knives and one that comes along uses guns, then the one that guns wins.
And you have to what you have to understand is that not just in prison, this is happening on the street. Yeah. So whoever controls the streets controls the town. Okay. So it doesn't matter if Luton has a 20% Muslim population; they control the streets. Trust me. Yeah? They control the drugs. They control the gangs. They control the prostitution. Once they're in control of that, they control the town, because no one can rise up against them, because they have. For example, when I spoke out in 2004 against the Islamic, I made it clear who I was against. What I did is I named gangs. I named a famous gang who have been in national newspapers, who I said were running certain chicken shops. And what I called on the police, I said, if we know what they're doing, and I know what they're doing, and I'm telling you they're grooming kids, they're prostituting them. And remember, this is 2004. Think about how long ago no one was talking about this issue. I said, this is 2004. This is what they're doing. Religious and racial attacks against whites and blacks are commonplace. Yeah? We're just supposed to accept this. Okay? These gangs, the police are not tackling the heroin, because it's like a decay of... I watched as Farley Hill was destroyed with heroin. I watched friends I know that are now dead through heroin. Yeah? Brought in by Muslim gangs. And as all this was happening, what were the police doing? Well, they were busy smashing football hooligans for having a fight on a Saturday. They weren't targeting these gangs. So the leaflet said all of this. Now, I made it clear this is not targeted at the majority of Muslims who are not part of this, yeah. But this point, now, what was the fallout from this for me? Straight away, my house was done. Straight away, I had to go into hiding. I then had a situation for years where the only time I could enter out was in a group of football hooligans. So if I go out as a group, because I know that when I go out, I become a target. I had phone calls. I become a target of every Muslim gang in the town, simply for raising issues that I linked the gangs to the extremism, which years later I read in the newspaper where they're doing the same, because I knew it. I've seen it, experienced it. I know kids that have got involved in it. I know how it works. Even now, for example, we're sitting here now. This hasn't come out in the media yet. Yeah, Khalid Masood. Now, the minute this happened, and when I say so, when I went on the rant at Westminster, I said he would have been radicalised in prison. He will be known to our security services. The next day, we find out who he is. He's radicalised in prison. He's known to our security services. The next day, I put Birmingham. I tweeted. You can dig up the tweet. Birmingham, Luton, East London. The next day, the police are raiding Birmingham, Luton, East London. Yeah. I then tweeted Luton Islamic Centre. Now, this has not come out yet. Yeah, but I started looking into Khalid Masood, the school he worked for. Now, the school he worked for, and this is why when people call us ignorant, I get called ignorant all the time. Yeah? I think you don't know, you have no idea or any idea of what it's like. You just don't understand what I'm talking about. So I looked into the school he worked for. Then I looked into the directors of the school he worked for. And I found out that the directors of the school he worked for were Kadir Bask. That's the director. This is not like, I'm not slandering anyone. These are factual things. I've got all the evidence. I'm going to put it into a video myself. Now, Kadir is the Imam for Luton Islamic Centre. Luton Islamic Centre, this is what gets me. See, I read into all of this. I look into all of it. And if you look at this, I'll just get up why I get frustrated, because I done a documentary in 2010 where I was portrayed as an extremist, and what they did is, in fact, every Muslim I was opposing in that documentary is now in jail for terrorism. Yeah? But what they did is they got up Kadir Bask, and it said Moderate Imam Kadir Bask, and it introduced him as Moderate Imam. Yeah. Now, years later, Kadir's on my local radio. You can look up this yourself. So I walk into the radio station. I said, "You're here talking about me. Let me talk to you." So I ask him questions and I push him on his views. And he admits that in his ideal Britain, we would be executing homosexuals. Yeah? So I'm laughing, thinking, you all call me an extremist, right? I know this man's views. The reason why I know this man's views, I know his views because my friend converted to that mosque. I know his views because my own Muslim friends hate that mosque because that mosque is the problem. But yet this man, who's been portrayed as a moderate, he's then admitting we need to execute homosexuals. From that conversation, Ofsted raided the school because he's a head teacher of a school. When they went into the school, they found books in the children's library saying we must cut off the hands and feet. Yeah. So I know all this is going on. He's portrayed as a moderate imam. The name of his mosque, Luton Islamic Centre, doesn't sound that bad, does it?
No.
Sounds all right. That's not what it's called. Okay, it's called Masjid al-Ghuraba. Now, Ghuraba comes from the Hadith, and it means what that translates to. The Ghuraba are the strangers who come into the land and turn it into an Islamic state. That's what the mosque's called.
It's a subtle hint there.
It's a Salafist Wahhabist mosque. Yeah. Now, he's employed and paid in Khalid Masood. Who was the imam what was the mosque the Stockholm bomber went to? It was the same mosque. Now, at the time after that, which the media never grill on this, at the time after that, Kadir Bass came out and said, we challenged him for his extremist views. We chased him out of our mosque. Yeah? Well, you got £180,000 that year from Prevent. And your job under Prevent was to report any problems with radical Muslims. And you didn't report him. And he then went and blew something up. And then I can name terrorist after terrorist after terrorist that went to this mosque. Now, guess who is training our police? There's an organisation called Scots Associates, which I can't believe the media don't do this. Yeah? Yep. All right? Scots Associates are training our government, our politicians and our police on Islam. Guess who one of the people who training them is? It's Kadir Bask, the man who says we should kill homosexuals. The man who, in his own writing on his website when we translated it, gives an 8-page justification for the lashing of women. This is how bad the problem is. But because he speaks out, in Luton, the council set up a programme called Luton in Harmony. Yeah? And you have to understand, when this is your town, when you've got 3 kids, when you know what's going on and you see all this playing out, and you know who's involved, and you know where the money's coming from, and you know, for example, and I could just go on and on about problems like, so that this Luton Islamic Centre, Kadir Bask, then we've had, our council have then opened a centre called Discover Islam, yeah? And then I've started then looking, and I mean, like, it's all in our newspaper, this centre's opening to bring us the true Islam. So I then look into this centre. I find out the new manager who's going to be opening it is coming from Fulham. His name's Yusuf Bonner. Now, we're told constantly about outsiders coming into our town. So now we've got an outsider coming into our town. So I go on his own personal blog to look at what his views are. He says he's excited about coming to Luton. He will not rest until Islam is brought into every home in Luton. This is his words. We need to deactivate the suicide vests that Christians are wearing. Yeah? This is the man coming to bring us true Islam. I then set up a Muslim profile. I then want to know who's funding this. So I contact IRA because I see that they're linked in Tower Hamlets. This is what's happening across our country. These groups I then I contact Abdul Rahim Green and I say, great to see the centre opening in Luton, but is it any involvement of yours? So I've got proof and evidence. Yes, we're behind it, yeah? I then go on to Abdul Rahim Green's YouTube page where he says that we can beat women with sticks. And I'm saying the true Islam, and not just the leader of my council, but the leader of our police opened this centre. Yeah, you see,
you're listening to the Delingpole podcast with me, James Delingpole, brought to you by Breitbart with my special guest, Tommy Robinson. More in a moment.
Check out the official Breitbart store today. Store.breitbart.com is the home for the brand new official Breitbart store. Head there now for products for women and men, like t-shirts, baseball tees, tank tops, hoodies, and hats, or an unapologetically American belt buckle. Store.breitbart.com has these items and many more, so get your gear now at store.breitbart.com. This is Delingpole, a Breitbart.com podcast. Here once again is James Delingpole.
You're listening to the Delingpole podcast with me, James Delingpole, brought to you by Breitbart with my very controversial and surprising and interesting special guest, Tommy Robinson. Tommy, you started off by telling me about your experiences going to Oxford, the Oxford Union. Now, my experience of Oxford is that it's incredibly politically correct, full of social justice warriors and stuff. But what you were saying just now amazes me, that they actually warmed to you, having initially hated you.
Yeah, completely. Like, completely warm to me. In fact, the Pakistani girl sat next to me, if anyone can watch this on YouTube, the Pakistani girl sat next to me, she's from Pakistan. She doesn't cover her hair. She told me afterwards in conversation that she went to the Muslim community in Manchester and she had to run out. She just said, I couldn't stay there. She said, I had to get to the non-Muslim community. And I'm like, why? She said, because it was more extreme than back home. She said, you understand, back home I don't cover my hair. And I was shocked by this. And the reason why I'm shocked by this, because from the age of 5 upwards now in Luton, from schoolgirls, all the Muslims cover their hair. You won't find one Muslim adult woman that is not wearing a hijab. Yeah? And now it's spread into the children as well, the school kids. Yeah? So here we have a girl in Pakistan, and I just presumed this is what it's like. And she said, no, she's telling me how liberal parts of Pakistan are, how the youth, how the universities, how the students, there's this real upspring for liberalism and for secularism. And I was just gobsmacked by it. And she said, I'm disgusted at what they're doing here. And this was a Pakistani Muslim from Pakistan.
So what do you think we can learn from that? Because whenever there's a new terrorist atrocity, like we had in London last week before, the word goes out where apart from the Ahmadis, there's always a demonstration by the Ahmadis who are lovely and who are vilified by their own community, and even, well, they're murdered, aren't they?
Yeah, they're murdered. They can't go to Mecca. They can't do the Hajj. They're seen as apostates.
But apart from the Ahmadis, you don't generally get the Muslim community ganging together to condemn this disgusting action. Now, is this because they support it, or is it out of fear, or what?
It's a difficult one, really, because, look, I listen to their argument, yeah? I listen to their argument, and we've done some terrible stuff to their countries. So if it's their motherland, and they're looking at some of the atrocities that are happening in there, which I hear their argument. So I try and view everything from both sides. So I'm sitting there, and just last week, I believe, one of our airstrikes has killed 200, including kids. So
what, in Mosul, you mean?
Yeah, Mosul.
Yeah, but I mean, Mosul, we're in support of Islamic forces who are trying to reclaim.
Yeah. I just don't think so. When I sit there and I talk to my Muslim friends about it, and they said, well, no fuss is made about when this has happened and this has happened, this has happened. I said, yeah, but you have to choose your and there is no fuss. You're right. There's no fuss made. There's no street protest made. But then when there's a cartoon of Muhammad, or when there's an anti-Gaza protest, we'll see thousands upon thousands, or even hundreds of thousands marching. So it's very hypocritical. And when you talk about the Ahmadiyya sect, I look at all the time that the preachers that are coming into the country, and I look at what they're saying and what they're doing. And just in the last month, I've highlighted preachers that have come in who have openly said and quoted in mosques that Ahmadiyya Muslims must be killed for blasphemy, for apostasy. But they're still coming in. So when you say, what can we do about it? What can we do about this fact? What can we do about the fact that Indonesia, which houses hundreds of millions of Muslims, probably only 50 of them have gone to fight for ISIS? Whereas in Britain, that holds 3 or 4 million Muslims, 2,000 have gone to fight for ISIS. What we've created in Britain, and we've done it in our government by housing and giving home to Islamic radicals as it suited their agenda back in the day, in the past, whether it suited their agenda against Russia when Afghanistan was going on. We've actually housed, supported, accommodated this ideology. But our government have. And
so you trace it back to the days when it was known as Londonistan.
Yeah, I do.
And this was a political move against the Russians?
Not even just, I'll trace it back to them, but it's happening now. Muslim Brotherhood set up their offices in the UK. Muslim Brotherhood, which we allowed. So organisations that are banned in terrorist like if you just look at Hizb ut-Tahrir, these groups are banned in many Muslim countries. They're not allowed to operate, yet they're flourishing here in universities. We have bred, and again, this can come back down to the money, where the influence is coming from Saudi. So if you look at the prison, I'll go off topic all the time, but in the British prison system, 90% of the imams are Deobandi. Deobandi being a conservative, strict, radical form of Islam. 90%. They're not Sufis. They're not converting people to Sufism. Yes. They're converting people to the most harsh, strict, no music, no this, no women, all these views that are not going to work in our society. That's what's happening, and that has to. I think that has to come down to the influence that Saudi has on our country and our government. It can only come down to that.
Yes. Well, given that this is so, and given that everyone wants to be in the Muslim gang in prison, and given that the Muslim gangs are all dominated by Wahhabis or Deobandis, given that that is so, what on earth do we do? So let's start with the prisons, because these seem to be a very fertile training ground for this whole problem. What do we do about them?
We separate prisons, A and B. So it would work beneficially, financially beneficial, to have Muslim and non-Muslim prisons anyway, yeah? Because Muslims will want to live their life under Islamic, under halal, they want mosque, they want this. All the things that non-Muslims' rights get trampled on in prison, because the prison has to shut on a Friday afternoon. You can't come out of your cell because all the Muslims need to be taken to mosque. Everyone has to eat halal. But there should be, I believe, but they'll never do this. But they should and they have to. Muslim, non-Muslim prisons. Separate completely. But also, because the Muslims are bullying the non-Muslims. Yeah, that's what's happening.
I've heard this. That if people who eat pork get
Oh, you get beat up. You can't.
So what you're saying? Nobody eats sausage in prison anymore?
No. So in certain prisons, when you go to the high-ranking, the high-end, which is the maximum security ones where people are serving life, you can't go cook. So in some prisons, once you get privileged enough, you get your own little cooking pan. Yeah. So and you can order bacon or sausage. You couldn't do that. You'll get killed. You'll get boiling water poured over your face. You can't do that. So non-Muslims are being bullied. They're having to pay protection money. They're being converted en masse. So you have to separate the two. And then if you want to save the moderate Muslims, then you have to have separate prisons for terrorists. Why are we, when you've got, let's look at a terrorist. A terrorist is an enemy combatant. It's a fighter for a foreign ideology. Yeah, they should be in a military prison. They should not be mixing with car thieves. It's just not going to work. It doesn't work. Why are you putting someone who planned to massacre and blow up 100 people in jail with someone who committed a mortgage fraud?
And what is the answer? Why are they doing that?
Because they're scared to admit the problem, and they're scared to admit we're in a war. And once they admit we're in a war, these people are foreign fighters for that war. Then if they're foreign fighters for their war, then they should be interned and kept until we're out of war. And this war is going to be a lifelong struggle. We know that. Why are we releasing people who we know have gone to jail for prison? I think 70 are being released this year, terrorists. 70 are going to come out this year. We know, and no one can deny, they've got worse in prison. We know the problem in prison. So we're letting enemy fighters, let's look at it like that. Look at it like a war like when we were Germany. Would you let German fighters back out of prison to walk our streets? Would you do that? It just would not happen. But we're doing it because they hide under an ideology that's masquerades as a religion. That's what's happening. So because of that, because of the freedom of religion, because of the power that they have as the so-called minority in many places, then we won't deal with it. And that's what we should have. We should have military-run prisons for terrorists who are foreign combatants who should not be released. Should not be released.
Just briefly, a side alley here. How on earth did you not get killed in prison?
I think that there's whoever put me in prison and the people that were pulling the strings would probably have sat around the table and said exactly the same in an angry term. So I know what. So I have to change who I am. Who I am sitting here with you now is not the man I have to be when I walk through my hometown. Yeah, I have to change. So when I get to jail, I change. So I change because I'm fighting to survive. So in a sense of, if I talk to you, like I'll talk you through two different prison experiences. I got put in Wood Hill prison. Now I'm in a maximum security prison full of terrorists. In 2012, I spent 6 weeks there. When I was in there in 2012, to move me from A to B, they had to lock the whole prison, because I was such a target. So they kept me safe. Right? They broke laws to keep me safe because they kept me on solitary confinement. I wasn't allowed to see anyone do anything, go to church. I wasn't even allowed to go to church because they felt that the Muslims had such an influence they'd get someone in the church to kill me. So that's what happened in 2012. I then go back in 2014. I land in Wood Hill again. I expect the same. Off you go. I'm put on the first night centre. The first night centre is where you spend 1-2 days before you're put onto the main wing. On the first night centre is 12 cells. So I walk straight out, see the first Muslim. I said, you know who I am? And bearing in mind, I've already changed who I am. So I said, you know who I am? And he says, yeah. I said, if me and you got to have a problem, look at my face and do it. Because I'm coming to you as a man. We can sort it out if you want to have I don't have a problem with you individually, but I know what to expect here. He shook my hand. I thought, sound. I said, I don't want a problem with you. I had a conversation with him. I said, I'm not against all Muslims. I do have a problem with what's going on. Then I've had my doors opened, and it's a Royal Marine, ex-Royal Marine, because I've spoke to him, prison officer, and he said to me, when they come to get you, do not leave this cell. Your life depends on it. So I sat there. I looked at my brother-in-law because he was a code D. I said, all right, sound. Half hour later, my door's opened. He's there with 2 prison officers. He says, come on, Lennon, you're going to B-Wing. I said, I ain't going anywhere, mate. I'm staying here. And then straight away he said, if you don't go anywhere, I'm going to arrest you. If I arrest you, you'll be put straight on down the block, which is giving me safety. Yeah. So he's intentionally doing this. So I said, you're going to have to arrest me then. So he arrests me, puts me down the block. I then have to see a governor. Later on, he comes to see me. He says, do you know where they were putting you? I said, where? They're putting on you on B-Wing. He said, you know the 6 Muslims who are doing 30 years for planning to blow you and kill you up, blow you up and kill you? I'd been to their court case in 2012 at the Old Bailey. They got 30 years. They got caught with guns, bombs and suicide notes on their way to murder me. Yeah, so he said, they were putting you on there. He goes, you're going to be killed, mate. He goes, now, part of me wants he named the woman who's made the decision. He said, part of me, she'll be done for corporate manslaughter because we all know what's going to happen. Yeah, he goes, but he also explained to me, you have to understand, as prison officers, there's 3 or 4 of us with 100 prisoners. Yeah, many of these are radical Muslims. Now, they'll open us up. They'll kill us. They'll hurt us. Yeah, they're doing 30, 40 years. There's nothing to lose. So don't think you're not going to get set up here. Yeah, so he told me all of this. I said, all right, sound. So then I've seen the governor. I then go to see my solicitor the next day. I see my solicitor. I get walked through. I see my solicitor. On the way back from seeing my solicitor, they open a door. A door with a waiting room with about 8 prisoners in it. I see straight away the beards. They locked me in the room. That's why I've got all fake teeth. They locked me in the room. I then get annihilated in the room. They open the door at the end. They open the door. I'm fighting for my life in there, but I know what to expect. I didn't even sit down. I knew what was coming. I survived that. Yeah, that was an opportunity that was given to them to get me. The only reason why I survived it is because the 3 Muslims, when they put me in there, I could tell by their faces, didn't know I was going to be put in there. They didn't have chivs, they didn't have knives, they weren't waiting, because people make weapons in prison. They were not waiting and ready for me to come in that room. Yeah, obviously the prison officers put me in there, but they weren't. That's one scenario. After that, I was put on isolation again, which saves me. Exactly the same. I got put in Bedford prison. Now, when I got put in Bedford prison, and for me, as soon as I walked into Bedford prison, I looked at the prison officer. Merrinbine, Bedford's 10 miles from here. I looked at the prison officer. I said, "You got a brother called Mark, the man on reception?" He said, "Yeah, I have." I said, "I know your brother because it's my local prison, yeah." And then
local prison.
It's a local prison, so local workers.
Yeah,
so then I said to him, "Right. Let me," I said, you know what I'm going to face in here? He goes, "I do, yeah." He goes, "Let me have a look through the wings, yeah." So you have to go on induction wing. All the time you go on induction wing. So I'm asking who's in the prison. I'm asking if lads I know from Luton are in there. So I'm thinking, put me somewhere where someone's going to help me, yeah, because I know what's coming. He goes through. We established that men that I know are on B wing. Yeah, we established that the biggest wing is A wing, the most Muslims are on A wing, and the Muslims that are doing 25 and 30 years for the murder are on A wing. So I don't want to be there because they're the ones that are going to really kill me. Yeah, they're not going to cut me up or beat me up. They're going to murder me. Yeah. He goes upstairs to see the governor. He comes back downstairs and says, "I'm so sorry, man." I said, "What?" He said, "You're going on A wing." And I went, "Give me a pen and paper." So I wrote 6 pages out to the governor saying he has a duty of care for my life and my safety. And he's going to fail this. Yeah. And I said, "And make sure he reads that." He come back down, he said, "You're going on A-wing." So then I know then, in my mind, I'm going to cause mayhem the minute I'm on here. Because, and that's not because I want to. I was terrified, man. And as they walked me onto the wing, they're all howling. The Muslims, they're everywhere, all on the landings. And I'm getting walked on just thinking, Jesus Christ, what is this? And then they put me in my cell at 10 to 12. Dinner's at 12 o'clock. I'll go straight to the window. And I say, because they're all shouting, "You this," and I'm arguing with them all. I said, I'm here. I'm in this cell. Yeah, but I'm saying this, and I know when that door opens at 12 o'clock, I'm not getting put back in that cell. I'm not waiting for 8 men to get me in that cell. Yeah, I'm not. This is not going to happen. Okay, I've got 3 kids. I'm going home to see. So when they open that door at 12 o'clock, I walk straight into the canteen. I said, who's got the problem? Who? And this is in front of all the cameras, you see. Because in prisons, there's cameras. In Woodhill, there's no cameras on the wings. 8 people can come get you in the cell. There's no cameras. So, yeah, I'm going to put something on top of that. Yeah. So I then walked in. I said, "Who's Muslim?" Straight away, I'm at it, fighting. But I had to do this. Yeah? This is a prevention safety tactic for me, because once I do this, I put the prison in a situation where they have to punish me. So to punish me, they then have to isolate me. I'm then safe. The next prison in Peterborough, exactly the same happened. This was on a documentary, 24 Hours in Police Custody. The Muslims, I walk in again, they're going to do me with boiling water. I defend myself against a Somalian, and I'm prosecuted. So yeah. But I should never have been in this situation because, as a duty of care, there is no one in their right mind. Who in their right mind would put me on a wing with Muslims serving 25 and 30 years for murder, who have radical with terrorists? Who would do that without an intentional motive of me being disappearing?
Where are these orders coming from?
Yeah, that's it from the top. It can only be.
Well, where is the top? How high? We're not the Prime Minister, presumably.
No, you have to see how. I've caused a lot of problems. I think that I've annoyed a lot of people. I've heard from I heard after a documentary I was filming in 2012, 2013, when we walked over Tower Bridge, we brought London to a standstill. We walked thousands.
Who's we?
The English Defence League.
Right.
We took thousands of people into Tower Hamlets. The tourism, the whole place was watching. Yeah. And I was told then by someone from security services who had made contact with the documentary makers who were filming us. They'd made an approach to them, not me. They made an approach to them to say that Theresa May at the time, who was the Home Secretary, that this isn't going to be allowed to continue. Yeah, this isn't going to be allowed to continue. Now, I know going back, you have to understand that if I could sit here and tell you, and people won't believe me, what the police have done, what you will not believe the illegal things they've done, the persecution they've done, the targeting of my wife they've done. I then had I was approached then when I was in prison the last time. I was approached by a secretive unit in Scotland Yard called Met Intelligence Bureau. I was approached and told that when I get out of jail, will I work for them? Yeah? Will I work for them? It will be financially beneficial to me. What they did is, I said, no, I've got no interest in this. They were very interested in Britain First. Yeah, that's what they wanted. They wanted me to unite the right. Unite the right under their control. His words, if there's a terrorist attack, we want to be in control of the reaction to it. Right. Now, the way they sold it to me, the way they were trying to sell it to me, is that I'd be doing my country a service. Because if I genuinely don't like the far right, which I don't, I despise the real far right. Yeah. The Nazis, the fascists, the Combat 18s, the National Front, I despise them. I despise them on the same level I despise Islamic extremists. Yeah? So I would be helping the security services against this. Now, I said no. They asked me what my plans were. I told them that when I get out, I'm going to sell my properties. I'm going to use the money from that because no one's going to employ me again. I'm going to use the money from that to get back into my building trade. When I got out of custody, and I'm going to be able to prove this soon. When I got out of custody, I was then contacted again. Yeah, will I work with them? No, not interested. Thank you very much. Yeah. I was then driving on the motorway. I was pulled over by 3 cars. I was arrested on burglary. No joke. No. I was arrested on burglary. Okay. I was held for 24 hours. I then went home. When I went home, my wife said to me, Winchester Prison's phoned. She gave me a number. It was 0207. I was on bail for burglary. Just made up. Bail for burglary. I rang, like many things people may put me in with my partner. Burglary's not ever going to have been one of them. Yeah. I rang the number. He said, oh, it's Ollie from MIB. I said, oh yeah. He said, we can help you out of the predicament you're in. I said, I'm not in a predicament. And they said, well, you are, you see, because when you answer bail in 4 weeks, if you're charged, you're going to do 9 months on licence recall. You're going back to jail for 9 months. Now, if you understand from my point of view just how terrifying prison is, yeah, how I know that any opportunity I get put in there, it's basically life or death. Yes. And I'm not expecting to make it out. I don't expect if I get put in prison, I fluked my way through. Yeah, I don't expect I'll make it back out again if that happens again.
Can I check? You were in prison for what? Something like mortgage
fraud. I was took to a prison, the maximum security prison with terrorists. I was in jail. Again, I was in jail for nothing I done. Okay, I was forced into a corner where I pled guilty under a deal that they dropped charges against 5 of my family members for tax. Right. Yeah? So, and one of those family members was my wife, who no one knows what she looks like. I made a plea where I took the fall to make sure that my family was safe.
You're saying they wanted to get you on something.
Yeah, they got me on whatever.
Didn't matter.
Whatever didn't matter, and they got me. I pled guilty. I'm in prison. Then I'm on this burglary charge where if I plead guilty, where I'm told clearly, if you work with us, then we'll get this dropped, yeah? And I said, I'm not in a predicament, mate, because I haven't left that motorway. I have been nowhere near a burglary. I've done nothing. They said, if you're charged, you'll do 9 months on licence recall. And just think what the public's going to think, because this is going to hit every media, yeah? And I cried my eyes out to my wife. I cried. That was a moment when I don't know what I can do. I sat there and said, what do I do?
How does your wife cope with all this?
Yeah, she has so my wife, she blocks things out. You have to remember, I don't tell my... If I walk through town today and someone says, I'm going to kill you, if I get told by the police someone's going to kill me, I don't tell my wife anything. She doesn't go on the computer. She doesn't follow any media. She's never seen an interview or speech I've given.
Right.
Her way of dealing with it is blockades it. I also don't talk to her in front of her ever about this. So when I get home, so from her point of view, she manages to deal with it because she doesn't see or hear it. So when I'm out like now, she doesn't know what I'm talking about. She doesn't know I'm involved. Yeah. When I get in my house, I'm home as a father of three. I'm her husband. I'm not in talking about politics.
We're talking about plumbing and football.
I'm talking about life. Yeah, I'm talking about my kids. Yeah.
And what about your kids? I mean, do they know about this?
No idea at all. No. My eldest, only this summer, I sat down and explained. I had to because she was going to the high school. So I was asked by the school. Again, I sat with the school, cried my eyes out again. Because I don't want people to judge my kids. But you have to, I've never once mentioned Islam, Muslims. I've never given my view to my children. Yeah, and I've never done that in the sense that I think that at some point, I think they're kids. Let them be kids. Yeah. Once they get to an age, I do want to explain to them what's happened, what's gone on. I'm also wary of the point that if I talk to my children about Islam and my children repeat things, I'm wary that it'll give social services an angle in to hit me for something else. So I'm super cautious about everything. But yeah, my kids don't understand. If you said Tommy Robinson to my kids, no idea.
Just Dad.
But they don't know Tommy. My name's Stephen Lennon.
Oh, I see.
They wouldn't even understand the name.
Right, yes.
You said EDL to my kids. They would not know what it is. My eldest, I've had to sit down and I explained it to her in the way that I said, darling, people don't like me. Some people don't like me. Okay? Daddy's done things. Daddy said things that people don't like. I said, you have to understand. And I spoke her through. I had to tell her I've been in prison. And in her mind, listen, I had to tell her I've been in prison. And I said, darling, Daddy was put in prison for the things he said, not what he did. And the things he said were right. Yeah. But some people didn't want to hear them. Yeah. I said, and as time's gone on, people understand they were right. The things that I was saying years ago. And then, so she can't understand this. Yeah. And then what's happened is, and you can watch this video, if anyone listening to this, go on YouTube, put in Tommy Robinson, Cambridge Kids. I'm in a pub with my children. I'm having something to eat. Officers turn up in the pub. Have you seen this video, James?
I know about it.
Yeah. So officers turn up in the pub. They tell me I have to leave the city. I asked them, at what grounds are you making me leave the city? I'm enjoying a day out with my family. Yeah. They're quite abrupt. They're rude. They're arrogant. They have cameras. I then make the site. I then think, I'm going to be arrested. I'm told I'm going to be arrested. I have to leave. So my children at this point, my friends took my children away. So they're not listening to this conversation. I don't want my children to hear any of this. I then walk outside and I say to the officers, see you later, lads. And I say, come on, kids, we're going. I don't want my kids to be aware anything's going on. The police then follow us with cameras. Yeah. At this point, my children become hysterical. Yeah, Daddy, what's going on? What's going on? Why are they doing this? Why are they doing this? We haven't done anything. We haven't done. And so I said, children, calm down, calm down. And one of my daughter, actually, the only time the police stopped following us, because my 5-year-old run, and she nearly got hit by a car. She tried to run because they were terrified. You can hear them, yeah. The next day, my eldest said to me, Daddy, I understand. And I said, what do you mean? He said, why they sent you to prison without doing anything. I saw yesterday. So it opened a 9-year-old child's eyes. She saw herself. I'm getting teary even talking about it.
Yes.
She saw that so whereas she couldn't understand someone could be put in prison for something they haven't done.
Yeah.
For what they're saying, she saw the way the police treated us, and I said, I teach my children the police are the good guys. Yeah. I teach them that the police are right, and we should. You always support the police. And that's not because I understand that individual officers have never done anything to me they probably wanted to do. They're told to do by people pulling their strings. It's a hierarchy of policing. The individual police officers, I still say I support individual police officers. In fact, even the arresting officers, when they've arrested me, are super nice guys. So my children I bring up like that. Then it's like, how am I supposed to do that when you've terrified my kids? My 5-year-old who ran away that day, tried to run away. I've then gone to the next Luton game. As I've walked in at home, when we've walked past the police officer, she got hysterical. As soon as she saw the police, she's grabbing my leg, Dad. And it's just like, you've done that to my kids. I've shielded my kids from knowing I've been in prison. I've shielded them from any of these problems. I've shielded them from the fear and the worry, because I also understand that when my children get old enough to know that Muslims want to kill us, they're going to get scared.
Yep.
And that eats me up, knowing that as a dad, I've put them in a position where they're going to be scared.
You're listening to the Delingpole podcast with me, James Delingpole, brought to you by Breitbart with my special guest, Tommy Robinson.
Breitbart News Daily with Alex Marlowe.
Let's get Bo Dietl in on the conversation.
We must stop the immigration until we're effectively able to know who's coming into our country and why you come to America. Do you love our freedom? Well, if that's the reason why you come to America and you want to be part of us, welcome aboard. If you want to come to America and disrupt the freedom and the great country that we have, you stay the hell out.
Breitbart News Daily, weekdays from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. East on Sirius XM Patriot 125.
This is Delingpole, a Breitbart.com podcast. Here once again is James Delingpole.
You're listening to the Delingpole podcast with me, James Delingpole, brought to you by Breitbart with my very special guest, Tommy Robinson. Tommy, I've got to ask you before we end this conversation. You're a dead man walking, aren't you? I mean, is that how you feel sometimes?
No, I feel like I'm walking around with terminal illness, and it took me years to adjust to that. And in those early days of trying to adjust to it, I drank a lot. I'm honest, yes. I'm going to be honest with you. I took drugs, and that was up to 2012, and that's what I'm honest about everything. Up until 2012, I was an absolute mess at that point. I then got sent to prison for 22 weeks in solitary confinement, and it was the best thing that could have happened in that sense because it probably saved my life. Because I went from working on a building site to, you're right, I fully understand I'm a dead man walking. And that took me years to adjust to understand that. It's like now, I'm even looking at planning now the most amazing summer holiday because I'm sitting thinking, will there be one next year with my kids?
Yeah.
So when I think like that, and I think like that because it's not because I'm dramatising it, I know it. Do you know what I mean? I know, it's not, you've had 6 caught with guns and bombs, yeah? I always put myself into other people's shoes. If I was them, who would I target for a reaction?
Yeah.
Target me. So I know that. So I know the things I've said, the blasphemous things I said against them. I know that I'm probably the most...
Have you said blasphemous things against him?
Well, against Mohammed, so that they see. Right. See as blasphemy. Okay. They see that...
So that would be your main crime as far as
you're
they're
dead.
concerned.
Well, in the notes that the ones were arrested with, the note said, like, you have criticised Mohammed,
Right.
you have slandered her, so that's why you must die.
Yeah.
Which, again, comes down to scripture in Islam that tells them they have to do that. So, yeah, I understand that I also live, walk, and am from Luton. So I made the decision that I can cut, run and hide, or I can continue walking with my head up. And I walk with my head up every day. I walk everywhere. I go everywhere on my own. I don't have security. I don't have protection. I just live my life where sort of I put a bulletproof vest on. I thought, I'm not even wearing this. I'm going to continue the way I want to continue. And if I'm killed, I'll die the way I want to die, where I want to die. And if that is, I want it to be in Luton.
And they know where you live, obviously.
They don't know the house, no. So I keep everything super, super secret. So I've lived in 6 houses in 5 years. If I thought 1 minute that someone could find where I am now, I'll be gone tomorrow.
So has anyone helped you with this? Has anyone advised you from the security people? Or are they not interested in you?
No, so the latest house I moved to 6 months ago, the first thing counter-terrorism did was come out. Each property I've lived at, we've had vehicle recognition, facial recognition. They monitor everywhere near there. Yeah. So
Right.
every entrance to get into the area where I'm in is.
So they do care a bit. They don't totally want you
Do
to
you know
die.
why they care? Because they worry of the reaction.
Is that right?
Yeah, they worry when I was leading EDL, they worried of the reaction, which is why this is what I portray from it. Reason why I was on solitary confinement in 2012, because I believe they thought if he's killed in jail, there's going to be riots across this country. Yeah. Now, when Lee Rigby got beheaded, I think they probably realised actually, no, there's not. Yeah. The reaction's not going to be there.
Yeah.
The next time I go in jail, I'm fed to the wolves. So I take the sense that individually, like even just yesterday. The police come to my house yesterday morning. They come to my house to ask, am I in London on Saturday? And it's the same inspector from Bedfordshire Police who I like. I like him. I trust him. He's honourable. I've spoke to him now for 7 years. He come to me and said, where are you? I need to see you. I said, I'm in the gym. Yeah. He comes straight to the gym. And I said, what's up? He goes, you're supposed to be in London on Friday, meeting someone here. I said, yeah. He said, well, we've intercepted coordinates from Syrian, from fighters in Syria. One of them was from Luton, some little fat idiot, who's calling himself a soldier. I think you weren't a soldier, you're a little knob. I grew up with you. You're definitely not a soldier because you get punched. But so they've intercepted coordinates. where he then asked me, please don't go on Friday. We're asking you, don't go. This is probably 12 months ago. Don't go. Okay, we don't want you to go. And I said, I'm not changing my life. Yeah. And then he said, but what if one of our officers get killed? And then I said, you're putting that on me. And then he said 450 of them are back, Tommy. Yeah, they're back. ISIS fighters are back. And I said, how dare you? You let them back, not me. Our government let them back. Your leadership let them back. I said, so I should now change my life, what I do, and I refuse to do that. I should change my life, what I do, where I go, because of this. So each time, and I do that as a repellent against it. So when Beds Police gave me, I went, Beds Police in 2011, I was watching the interview yesterday, they gave me an Osman warning that told me, leave Luton now. Leave Luton, your life is in danger, take your family, yeah? The first thing I do was walk straight into Luton Town Centre. I made a video saying, here I am, Luton Town Centre, I'm not leaving, this is where I'll be for the foreseeable future. I do that so Beds Police even yesterday knocked, where he come round and said, we understand you're in London Saturday for Britain First. I said, yeah, I am. He said, well, we'd like to know where you're meeting, which is a safety mechanism, because they understand people want to get me. So they want to know where I am, what I'm doing.
Yes.
Yeah, which I'm happy for. I'm happy for that. But at the same time, all the threats to kill my family, I mean murder my children over the years, not one has ever been followed up. And that's no joke. I've bought 300. I bought evidence of them. Here's who it was. Here's the people who think this is unbelievable. I've been punched in the face in my car on Channel 4 News. They don't arrest them. So I feel like they've sort of gave a open card to Muslims to threaten, abuse and attack me, because not one of them have ever been brought to justice. And I've been beaten up a lot.
So how do you plan for your future in a situation when you've effectively got no future?
I plan that. See, I see my role in this, and I'm happy to have a role. I see as enlightening and waking people up.
Right.
To what's
like
happening.
the Oxford Union, which must have been a special moment for you.
Yeah, that's had 1 million views.
Right.
So that's had 1 million people watch it. And I people call it red pilling now, don't they? You red pill people. Yeah.
Yes.
Now, I know that even in the last 2 weeks, I've red pilled probably hundreds of thousands of people to understand where we're at.
Right.
Understand facts. So issues. So of what's happening, with Islam, of what they're letting happen, of where we face. And that's all I feel I can do. And now what's the future? Now, I was associated with street protests and sometimes chaotic street protests. If it wasn't for those tactics, I would never have been able to get a voice.
Right.
Yeah? So whilst that was a major part of my life, the English Defence League. It was hard to leave, and I now I don't see that as the future. I don't actually see that as that productive, and I say that. So I see now we're in a new era. We're in a new era of online debate, of online videos, of online so where you're reaching out to the general public without causing problems on the street.
So you're doing videos now for Rebel Media in Canada, Ezra Levant's organisation.
Yeah.
Which is going quite well, I think.
It's going very well. Yeah, it's exploding actually.
And you did a video after the London killing.
Yep.
Killings rather. And that's had how many hits on?
That's over 30 million views.
That's extraordinary. And where is your audience?
This is what gets me. So after that, and I look at it. If you look at Lee Rigby's killing,
yeah,
my name trended after that. My video went viral. It had 1 million views in a day. Yeah, I made a response to Lee Rigby's killing where I said what we need to do. Yeah, and 3 days later, the Home Secretary stood and basically, I think she copied everything I said.
So what, in a nutshell, what did you say should be done? I
said about Saudi Arabia, stop Saudi money. I went into in depth what we're allowing to happen. Yeah, I've done the same again this time. Yeah,
right.
Now, if that trended, people want to hear it. If 30 million people viewed this, they want to hear it. It's giving a voice to people. Now, when we have debates, like I watch on, whether it be Question Time or Sunday Morning Politics or Big Questions, where's the voice for the people who think this? They
don't want to get offed, basically.
No, they won't put me on there because they don't want to give me a voice. But what's become relevant now is we don't need you to put me on there, because I'm going to reach those people. And we're going to reach those people. And whether that be myself, Paul Joseph Watson, I think, is one of the best things that's happened to
I totally agree.
Debate.
He understands. He won't even do the BBC.
No, he won't do anything.
He thinks they're worthless.
I think he is the best thing that's happened in this sort of fight back and resistance. The best thing that's happened.
Yeah, he's great.
When I sit and watch him, and He doesn't have the baggage. The good thing about him is he doesn't see. People can get back on me. They hit the ball. They get back on me because I'm honest about my previous life, yeah, my history. Yeah. But if it wasn't for that history, if I hadn't had a upbringing like that, I would never be doing this. I would never have been the man that would have said, no, we're not taking this, because I'd have been too scared. Because the first time I got beat up or the first time I got battered, I'd have been silenced. Now, so the good with the bad. Now, Paul doesn't have that. Paul is brilliant, and millions upon millions upon millions of people are listening to him. Yeah. More people listen to him than listen to any of these talk shows.
I must ask you, Owen Jones wrote a book about called Chavs.
It infuriates me, this stuff.
And he was speaking up for the white working class, and you are a genuine white working class. Has Owen Jones reached out to you ever?
Never. He just demonised us. When he wrote that book,
yeah,
he does exactly what that book, exactly what he said happens. It's all he does. Do you know, ask yourself this, could Owen Jones walk through a council estate anywhere in this country? The roughest council estates, yeah? I walk through the roughest non-white working class council estates and I get a hero's reception because I'm one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Owen Jones is not one of them. Okay, he does not talk for them. He does not support them. What he supports is a far left, what I'd say is a communist agenda.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. I was going to ask you one more question. I can't remember what it was. Oh yeah. So, yeah. Finally, you must have had moments when you asked yourself, why me? Couldn't I just have had an easy life? Couldn't I just be a plumber in Luton living my ordinary life? Why the hell do I have to end up in this nightmare position? And what answer have you come up with?
When I look at that, I look at previous generations, yeah? I wouldn't change any of this. I wouldn't change the thing. And that's honest. I wouldn't change going in prison and getting beaten up. I wouldn't change being scared in prison. I wouldn't change seeing what I saw in prison. Because it's a life experience like no other. And it's a life experience that chisels the character of who you are and what you know. And I think that I know, I've learned, and I've adapted, and I'm in a position now, a stronger position, mentally, physically, than I've ever been. And I fully understand what's happening. And when I say that, I look at my mum's granddad's brother was 15 years old, shot dead in 1919 in East Uprising in Ireland, martyred at 15. I look at my mum's other great granddad was given the Medal of Honour that only 6 people got. One of them was Winston Churchill from the French for bravery. Yeah, I look at our forefathers. The kids lied when they were 14 and said they were old enough so they could go and fight for our country. What I do is nothing. British soldiers are being shot at daily. Yeah, no one's shooting at me daily. That's the reality of it. So when I put it into perspective, I'll get a couple of punches in the face. People might want to kill me, but they're not here every day. Yeah? Lads are waking up, fighting for our country in faraway fields, getting shot at daily, having their legs blown off. So I put it in comparison to that. I've got friends one of my friends, God bless him, lost his legs out there. So I put it into that, and when people say like, "Oh, you're a hero," what I do is nothing really in comparison to what people are doing across the world to fight against this evil.
Thanks very much to my very special guest, Tommy Robinson. You were listening to James Delingpole on the Delingpole podcast, brought to you by Breitbart. Thank you very much. Goodbye.